Hello, my name is Michael Graham, and we're producing a video here to show how to change out a section of a white cane with another section and to shorten a white cane in case it is too tall for an individual using it. This video is sponsored by Global Cane Outreach, and it is not professionally done. Its primary purpose is to show someone how to do these tasks, especially while out in the field with limited equipment. And I would say that doing these tasks on a new cane is much easier than on an old cane. However, in this video, I'm using a very old cane that has a bad section in it, and I'm going to replace it with a shorter section and then show how to cut a section. There are certain tools that are helpful in these tasks. Out in the field, I have used primarily one tool, and that is this one. It's a pipe cutter. It's a small size, available in most hardware stores. At the time I purchased this, it was somewhere in the neighborhood of $12. It's probably more so now. It will cut a diameter of tube anywhere from 1/8 inch to 1 1/8 inch, which is certainly much larger than needed for any white cane that I have used. So other tools that can be helpful might be pliers, perhaps a wire. In some cases, I have used this, recognizable as an awl for writing braille on a slate, sometimes while untying a knot in the string, which is the cord I will be showing you shortly. If a knot in it is very difficult to untie, the awl might be helpful to do so. So the cane I'm going to demonstrate on is this one, and it is a rather tall cane. It is about 60 inches tall. Most will be shorter. And I want to simply make a comment on how do you determine what the right height or length of a cane is for a blind individual. And in general, it goes like this. If the cane comes up to the blind individuals, the blind student or child, up to the bottom of the sternum, say like here, that would be as short of a cane as you would probably want. Anything shorter than that is really too short. And otherwise, the length of it could come up as high as the chin or even the nose. Much taller than that is probably too tall. So how do you determine the length of the cane between those two? Some considerations are, does the individual walk fast and confidently? If so, a longer cane is warranted. Does the individual walk really slow and tentatively? A shorter cane might be more useful. A confident walker with a longer cane will not get into too much trouble from the length of the cane, whereas an unconfident walker will tangle the tip of the cane in with items from either side. So the structure of most folding canes, such as this, has a knot or knots at the top of the cane, and at the bottom of the cane, a tip that can be an access point for taking the cane apart. So the cane can come apart by accessing either of those two, the handle or the tip at the bottom. The handle of the cane, I would not advise taking that approach unless the bottom of the cane or the tip just won't cooperate. Won't cooperate means sometimes the tip is stuck on so tightly that it's hard to get it off. However, working through the handle of the cane does present other problems. So I'm going to show by accessing this cane through the tip. In this cane, the tip is not so tightly put on that I can get this off with my hand. So here's the tip. It's a standard one. And in the cane to begin with,
Closer.
in the cane, in this cane, there's a cord that goes all the way through the top of the handle, and it's a double-stranded stretching cord. In most collapsible or folding canes does have this cord. There are some collapsing canes that do not have a cord, and changing the length of those canes is not something I've ever done, nor would I typically recommend. So with this cane, I'm going to untie the knot at the end, and then right next to the knot is 2 washers. Some canes will have 1 washer. I prefer the 2 because over time they do tend to get rusted and dirty, and one could potentially break. So just take a second here to get this untied. People with nimble fingers can do this probably much faster than I can.
And you have to be sure not to let it go.
Yeah, I know. So still working on the knot. Okay, I've successfully untied the knot. The next thing I must do is take off the 2 washers and not lose track of them. So I'll set them right down in front of me. And now to take the cane apart, it's very simple at this point. The first section, in this case, is different than the other sections of the cane. And this is a place where it's important to pay attention to the joint. My thumb is on the joint, and what is critical about it is that there's a smaller diameter part of the joint and then a larger diameter. If the smaller diameter joint is a straight sleeve, such as on this cane, and slides into the section, in this case below it, it's something that is adaptable. So the bottom section of the cane is different than the others because it's all 1 diameter. Also on this cane, it's very well worn, but where possible, it's important to keep the bottom 6 inches of the cane as red. And the reason that that's an international standard that indicates the legality of a white cane. Now this second section, I'm going to remove it and put another section on in its place because this one has been cracked and it's literally secured with a hose clamp, which is less than ideal. So I've removed that section. I have another section from a different cane, but it's essentially the same. So what I'm going to do now is to thread the cords back through the sleeve that I'm going to place on the cane. And
Show the hook.
I'm using a wire that I've simply put a hook in by bending it with my fingers, and I'm using it then to thread through this section.
Make sure the section's headed the right direction.
It is. So
You gotta see that.
the fat part of this section is the one that goes up so that it can join the previous section, which had the narrower diameter. I've put just an ever so slight bend in the end of this wire in order to get it to go all the way through the sleeve. Otherwise it gets jammed on the tighter part of the section.
So you have to do each strand by itself?
Yes, so I'm doing this 1 strand at a time, and that's because the cord both cords together make such a large diameter that it's hard to get it through this section. Now, just to make sure that my cord doesn't get away from me, I have a very loosely tied knot in the end of it. Try to keep this up where it can be seen. And so I now have the second cord that I'm going to attach to the wire. I'm feeding it into the new joint or the new section. I've successfully pulled it through the joint, and sometimes that is a little difficult. Sometimes the sections can get very hung up on not letting the wire and the cord go through. Now I'm taking my other knot out. And as you can see, this new section fits just like the original section did. Now I've replaced the joint such that I no longer have a defective joint.
It's on the floor.
In this case, the bottom section of the cane is not as thin, it's not as small a diameter inside as the previous section, so I can put both cords and pull them through at the same time. But again, using the wire to help.
Just one came through.
One has to be careful at this point such that once the cord is through, there's not much excess room, so it's easy to lose track of a cord and have it slide up into the cane, which means you'd have to go back and fish it out by taking the sections apart and using the wire again. Now I'm at the point where I need to put my two washers on. I use one strand of cord at a time. There's one. And if only one washer is available, that's fine. It'll still hold quite well. And these are standard washers. I don't remember the diameter, but one can, of course, reuse the washers that found in the cane when taking it apart.
They just have to be small enough to go inside the...
Yeah, the diameter of the washer is exactly the diameter of the shaft of the cane. And let's see, there's the other one. So 1 cord. And 2 cord, I've got it there. So the next thing that's important to do is to tie a knot in the end of the cords with both strands while hanging on to not let them slip. Which I'm not doing really well at. This procedure is often, I would say, done a little bit more easily for people who have good finger coordination or are somewhat mechanically inclined. It becomes real obvious how to do it. It is not a difficult procedure. Interestingly enough, it's not something that we ever ran into in grad school. We're learning to be mobility instructors and learning all about canes. So now I've successfully tied a knot so that the washers are up against the shaft of the cane and the tip is ready to be placed back on the cane, and the knot will simply go inside the tip. So here I go, I'm getting the tip on. The tip is on there, and voila, the cane is taken care of. And in case the cane is not, if it's too stretchy, it can be adjusted by pulling cord up through the top and tying the knot closer to the handle. If it's okay, and the cane will fold. Like this one is a little worn, but in fact, it's probably too tight. I'd have to adjust this a little bit for for folding. But this is an old cane, but I've just now repaired it such that I can use it for future use. Now, I'm going to do one more operation here. And I'm going to show how to shorten a cane, and that is to take whatever section one might want and cut it with the pipe cutter. Now, to do this, one always uses the fatter part of the shaft, which is this end. In case of this end, this sleeve, or the smaller diameter part of the shaft, must fit into the next section. So you don't want to cut one here. So cutting off the wider diameter, use the pipe cutter. I fit the section of the cane into the pipe cutter. Just open it up wide enough to put it in. Screw it till it's just firm. And then a pipe cutter cuts quite easily by just rotating around. And each time you rotate around, you can tighten this handle just a little bit more. When it feels somewhat looser, tighten a little more. Rotate around a couple more times, tighten a little more. And so the diameter of the pipe cutter is getting smaller and smaller. And we'll go a little more. So I'll keep doing this until in this case, I should just about have it. In some ways, a pipe cutter like this actually works better on metal. Yet in terms of canes, I certainly prefer the carbon-based or fiberglass type canes.
How do you know how much to cut off?
It goes back to the question early on, what is the length of a cane that someone needs? And
How do you measure the piece you need to put in or cut?
such that if the cane originally came up to, say, the nose and you wanted it at the chin, well, that's how much has to be cut off. And a hacksaw could do the same job as a pipe cutter. This pipe cutter actually doesn't work so well on this kind of material, but it works. What one can do is, if there's quite a bit that has to be cut off, then you can cut a section of each part, like an inch off of each section. Generally, it's not advisable. It's more work than necessary. It's best to take as much as possible from one section, and it's simpler that way. The task overall isn't that complicated, and it can make a difference out in the field if the canes one has are simply too long for a given individual.
You
So-
have 3 different types of pliers. What would you need to use those for?
One of the things, this is a personal characteristic of mine, I always think if you need one tool for a task, why not have 3? What I've used with these tools, I have a vice grip, 2 of them actually, and occasionally with a really bad tip that's stuck really hard, I could use a vice grip and what I would do with the vice grip is take it and I'm adjusting it now for the diameter. Whoops. But I would place the vice grip on the end of the tip, adjusting as I go, so I don't want the vice grip to be overly tight. I just want it on there enough so that, like there, that way if I need help with my grip to move the tip, if the tip starts to move separately from the joint just above it, I know that it's going to come off more easily, such as that. So that's what I would use a vice grip for. In some cases, depending on the cane, I could put a vice grip on the tip and another one just above the tip. Generally with material such as this cane, it would be easy to damage the cane, so that I wouldn't generally do that, just in some cases. Before doing this video, I practiced a bit and used a vice grip for that. Then the last tool that I have is a pair of pliers. Any pliers would work if pliers are appropriate, and I just use that to help bend the wire that I use to run the cord through the sections. To put a nice tight bend in the wire, I use pliers. There's another way this can be done if it's necessary, if there's not a wire available anywhere. One can just take the cord in the center of the cane and tie string to it, but then getting the string through the sections is not always easy. sometimes a wire is easier. So if a piece of wire, something like this, is available, that's what one should use. So in a nutshell, that's overall how to change a section out of a cane or to shorten a section so that a cane can be adjusted to a proper length. And if someone has any questions or concerns, there is a website of Global Cane Outreach, and questions could be submitted there. It's globalcaneoutreach.org.